the recent industrial history of Japan suggests a somewhat similar combination.
But you know, I had the feeling, and I thought to myself, my gosh, at last I'm going to have Christopher Lasch at this table. Having read you for so many years, at last I'm going to find someone, and that seemed to be somewhat verified by my reading of your most recent book. Someone who's going to say, look, in a sense, more than in a sense, it's really all over. It's really all over, and let's turn our thinking now to the transvaluation of values. Let's forget the notion of rescuing the sense of responsibility, as you identify it, that certainly characterized America at one time. Mm-hmm. Is it hope? It's not optimism.
No, that's right.
Is it simply hope? Is it blind hope?
Well, no.
Is it wishful thinking?
No, I certainly hope not. It's the responsibility, I think, of any intellectual or scholar to resist wishful thinking. No, I don't think so. And I've tried just now to give you some reasons why this doesn't seem quite as far-fetched as it might have seemed as recently as 20 or 30 years ago. One of the things that's happened, in fact, in the last generation is that those large overarching schemes of historical explanation, Marxism being only one variety, that we all put so much stock in when we were growing up, have been shown to be untenable. And this book is written in part against that background, out of that mood, that is the mood of general disenchantment with big overarching schemes of historical explanation which insist that things have to happen in a certain sequence and that certain developments, notably the trend toward larger and larger units of production, larger and larger political units, that those are more or less inevitable and nothing can be done.
When you wrote The Culture of Narcissism, the story is that you visited with Jimmy Carter in the White House, and that he misunderstood, that he didn't fully grasp what it was that you were saying. Now, I'd like to know about that in reference to this, well, I can't call it optimism, you won't permit that, to this hopefulness that you just described. In a sense, he subscribed to your ideas. In a sense, he tried to derive something from them. Where did you diverge?
Well, I wanted him to put a more populist construction on his indictment of American consumerism.
Is that what the sweater that he wore in the television speech?
Well, populism is more than a style.
Right.
There's got to be some substance. And sure enough, I mean, it seems to me that I was right, because what offended people so much about the speech, there was a lot of criticism that was simply unfair. But the one point that wasn't unfair was that people who were themselves hard-pressed materially, ordinary working people, lower middle class people, who didn't see themselves in 1979 as living high off the hog, to be lectured, seeming to be lectured on their wild, riotous habits of consumption, didn't sit very well. What was needed was a program that called for sacrifices, all right, but made it clear that the sacrifices would be distributed in an equitable fashion, which would mean that those most able to make sacrifices would be the ones on whom the sacrifices fell. That's what I mean by populism.
You put your hope, won't use the word faith again, you put your hope in the resurgence of older American values in that populistic approach. Is that fair?
Yeah, a resurgence of old-fashioned values, old-fashioned morality, but with a radical edge to it, together with a commitment to radical, to an egalitarian vision of how society ought to be organized.
How do you find in a mass society such as our own, with mass media such as that camera staring at us, how do you find the ways and the means for reordering our values?
Well,
How do you break out of where we are in short?
a lot of important political activity still takes place without much reference to the media. It's not clear that you can, I hope it's not clear that you can have a politics that simply doesn't go beyond the media. Political organizations still have to be put together in a very painstaking way by means of local activity, word-of-mouth communication, and that gives me some reason to think that the sort of stifling effect that mass media have on political discussion, their ability to set the public agenda, may not be fatal to organizations that want to change the agenda.
Professor Lasch, if you were to believe that the grip of the media is too strong for us to accomplish what you're suggesting is not impossible. If we promised to stay where we are or to move further along exactly the same lines in our mass society, would you conjure up a different set of wishes for American life? Would you conjure up a different approach that you would advocate?
No, I think such a society would be doomed. A society that was committed to the same course.
Where is it written that our older values are not doomed?
Well, they may be doomed too, but our new society, that is the one that is now committed without much reservation to what is, after all, a very threadbare conception of the good life, ever-increasing abundance, comfort, convenience. I think that society, an attempt to pursue that vision much further, a vision that, again, is premised on sort of unlimited resources, unlimited capacity of the Earth's ecology to sustain this kind of production, almost unlimited American power in the world. Those are all, I think, demonstrably untenable assumptions, premises, and an attempt to sustain our present way of life in the face of those tremendous difficulties can only result in disaster, I think.
You're a historian. You must be in part then a prophet. You must, at times, take your knowledge of the past and project it into the future. What you just described, is that so unthinkable?
No, it isn't. It's all too thinkable. It's a frightening prospect, I think.
And then what? Then how do we reach the true and only heaven?
Well, the point of that title, of course, is that you mustn't confuse progress with the true and only heaven. It comes from a wonderful story by Hawthorne, The Celestial Railroad, which is a parody of Bunyan's Pilgrim's Progress.
And typical of our times, we have 30 seconds left. No, but seriously, you remain hopeful.
Yeah,
optimistic.
absolutely. Yes, that's my curious position.
I must say that reading Progress and its critics, The True and Only Heaven, was an extraordinary experience for me, and having you here, Professor Lasch, is too. I know we speak somewhat at cross purposes. I realize that. But that, I think, is because I'm even more of a pessimist. As you embrace reality, I'm the pessimist, but thank you so much for joining me today on The Open Mind.
You're welcome. Thanks a lot.
And thanks, too, to you in the audience. I hope you'll join us again next time. And if you care to share your thoughts about today's program, please write The Open Mind, P.O. Box 7977, FDR Station, New York, New York 10150. For transcripts, send $2 in check or money order. Meanwhile, as an old friend used to say, good night and good luck. Continuing production of this series has generously been made possible by grants from the Rosalind P. Walter Foundation, the M. Weena Foundation of New Jersey, the Edith and Dean Dowling Foundation, the New York Times Company Foundation, the Richard Lounsbury Foundation, and from the corporate community, Mutual of America.